Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen Klein, and I am the director of the Gender Policy Council. I feel like I need to be on my tiptoes. The director of the Gender Policy Council, and along with my colleagues Neera Tandon and Heather Boucher, I would like to welcome you to the White House. Neera hates when I say this, but I'm just going to start by pointing out that she and I have been working on childcare together for a very long time. Not as long as I think, but a very long time, and including with partners from the Department of the Treasury. So I am particularly happy to be here today for this topic. I will also note that we're hosting this important conversation as the capstone event for April, which marks Care Worker Recognition Month, and the one-year anniversary of the President's historic executive order on increasing access to high-quality care and supporting caregivers. Today, we're joined by colleagues at Treasury and HHS, as well as child care providers, the CDFI community, and philanthropy to discuss the challenges in the child care sector, one of the most critical sectors of our economy. As you all know, investing in child care is not just about child care. It's about so much more, as if that weren't enough, which it is. It's about giving children a strong start in life. It's about allowing parents, especially mothers, to participate fully in the workplace. It's about recognizing the value of child care workers and supporting child care providers who are disproportionately women and women of color. And it's about strengthening our overall economy. Care businesses supply services that are essential for the millions of families that rely on them and the U.S. economy as a whole. And yet, they operate within a market with fundamental challenges. We know there's a gap between the cost businesses incur to provide care at a quality that meets the needs of families and the price that families are able to pay. Our current economy fails to support care businesses, care workers, and the families in need of their services. So ultimately, we're faced with both an undersupply of high-quality, affordable care for families and businesses with profit margins that are so low that it makes it difficult to stay open and pay workers adequate salaries. Through investments in the child care sector, we can make high-quality care more available and the child care business model sustainable while improving pay for workers. And the President's economic agenda is intended to address these challenges in the care economy. I'll just give you a few examples. Through the ARP's, the American Rescue Plan's Child Care Stabilization Program, which was critical to helping 225,000 child care centers stay open during the pandemic, through the administration's investments in women-owned and minority-owned businesses, through the Care Executive Order that I just mentioned, the most comprehensive set of actions on care, executive actions on care, and through the President's FY25 budget proposal. We know that there's so much more to be done to ensure that resources are being deployed to businesses dedicated to providing care. And today's panel discussions, which will delve more deeply into how community development financial institutions can support access to care, are really a testament to that. CDFIs play a critical role providing fair, transparent financing and support to people and communities underserved by traditional financial institutions. Many CDFIs have developed expertise in supporting child care providers, tailoring technical assistance and financial products specifically for this industry. CDFIs can help and sustain the supply of child care that families desperately need, and I look forward to hearing from the experts in the room about how to make that a reality. As you all know better than anyone, investing in our care infrastructure yields tremendous benefits. It helps narrow the gender pay gap, enables women to remain in the labor force, and contributes to economic growth. As the President often says, care is the work that makes all other work possible, and it's imperative that we invest in it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Neera Tandon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to be with you. It's always fun to do work on care, to see so many great friends in the room who've been advocating and fighting for many years, and it's always great to work with my colleague Jen Klein, who thankfully did not age either one of us by discussing exactly when we started working on care. I want to say first how grateful I am to be co-convening this with between the Domestic Policy Council, the Gender Policy Council, and the Treasury Department, and really appreciate the leadership in focusing on care centers, care quality, care infrastructure, and we know that there's so much more we have to do in this space. Jen said it best, this is a high priority for the president. And we've been trying to demonstrate that priority over the last month with really a whole suite of activity focused on the president's care agenda and how we move it forward. A month ago, Jen and I hosted a roundtable with the Small Business Administration where we announced new funding to support child care centers, child care businesses. Just 2 weeks ago, we convened a conversation with Secretary Raimondo, governors, and the Chamber of Commerce to discuss the economic case of investing in care. And just last week, we issued 2 landmark rules that fulfill the president's commitment to improving access to long-term care and the quality of caregiving jobs. So we have a very robust agenda, but we also know that there remains incredible fragility in our child care infrastructure and our child care systems. And I'd like to just step back for a moment and discuss why that is. And as everyone in this room knows, we really expect child care systems, our child care centers, child care businesses, we sort of expect them to do volunteer work almost, right? We think of them as not-for-profits. And why do we think that way? Is it because we think of care work as secondary to other work? Or we kind of think we have outdated notions of stereotypes of people who are doing care work? But really what we're asking of the care centers is so much. They are living hand to mouth. Many leaders in care businesses are putting their own money in, really scraping by. And I think that's really because, as a country, we still rely so much on families to string together the money and resources. And because people have to take after-tax dollar resources to pay for childcare, and it can be quite expensive, our system is really one that just feels like it's often moving from possible crisis to possible crisis, demonstrated so clearly during the COVID crisis itself. And that's why the president believes strongly that we have to reorient how we think about care, that care is central to our economic growth, that the care economy is central to how we do as a country. But also, we have to put our money where our mouth is. If we really want to invest in, we believe families are important, we want to support parents, and the way to do that is to have a care agenda that really benefits families. So that is why the president has a robust child care investment that would mean that no family pays more than $10 a day for child care. That kind of large-scale investment will obviously provide a lot of breathing room to families, but really would provide a lot of stable funding to child care centers, to child care businesses, so that our child care centers would know that there's predictable resources from families. There would be a lot more funding in the system. And I would just like to say that, I think people like to think of a system of near universal child care as really far away. But we are not that far away. We have a significant proposal. The president is a champion of it. And we really need members of Congress to understand how central this is. This is a decision. As the president likes to say, your budget is a reflection of your values. And whether we truly invest in families is a question that really is before all of us, but also members of Congress. And so it is a choice for us to choose to invest in childcare or not invest in childcare, to invest in long-term care or not invest in long-term care, to invest in paid leave or not invest in paid leave. And the president has made his choice, which is to make those critical investments. And I really hope that we just get more word out, that we can have a robust childcare system like other countries have if we are just willing to make the investments that reflect our rhetoric, that we put families first. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Marcia Siegel, who is from the Department of Treasury and who will talk about the various ways we can support child care centers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Marcia Siegel. I'm the Deputy Director of the CDFI Fund. I'm sending regrets from our new director, Pravina Raghavan, who apologized that she can't be here today. But she asked me to come and support this really important event. So I'm going to start off by providing a little bit of background for those in the room that may not be familiar with what a CDFI is, with how CDFIs work, and then we'll delve into childcare a bit. So CDFI stands for Community Development Financial Institution, abbreviated CDFI, and the CDFI Fund started in 1994 with the beginning of the CDFI program. And the CDFI Fund's mission is to expand economic opportunity for underserved people and for underserved communities so that all people everywhere, all communities in America have access to the investments and financial services that they need to prosper. And we do this by supporting a nationwide growth and capacity building for CDFIs, which are community development lenders. To that end, the CDFI Fund has awarded nearly $8 billion in grants to CDFIs, and through its New Markets Tax Credit program, we've allocated $76 billion in New Markets Tax Credit. The Biden-Harris administration has provided significant support to CDFIs in many ways. For example, over the past 3 years, Vice President Harris has announced $12 billion in funding for CDFIs to address the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on low-income people in underserved markets and communities. So as to child care, I'm going to quote one of my favorite public officials, Treasury Secretary Yellen, not just because she's my boss, but she's one of my favorite public officials. She has said, the child care sector is a crucial and underfunded part of the American economy. However, it does not work for caregivers, it does not work for the parents, and it does not work for the kids. And because it does not work for them, it does not work for our country. And I thought that was very profound. In September 2021, the Department of Treasury published an important report called The Economics of Child Care Supply in America, in which several market failures are detailed that had led us to this place where we are today, urgently needing child care in many markets, and notably in low-income neighborhoods and for low-income families, the need for funding for child care is crucial. That's what's so unique and special about CDFIs and the role CDFIs can play. CDFIs are what we call financial intermediaries. They specialize in creating and growing new markets and financial products for people and places that private capital does not serve. I want to just give you a couple of examples. CDFIs finance healthy food initiatives, charter schools, health care clinics, affordable housing, and many kinds of other types of these types of activities in targeted markets. The arena that has emerged most dramatically now is childcare, which is why we're here today. And we know that some CDFIs are doing a lot in that area, financing a lot of different kinds of products and facilities and childcare centers, but we're here today to see how we can help that support grow. If the pandemic proved anything, it's that childcare is truly infrastructure in the care economy, and the Biden-Harris administration has been shedding light on this so well. You'll hear today more about how early care and education is as significant as healthy food and access to health care as drivers of economic mobility for people who are low income. And childcare has long been an invisible sector that is hugely undercapitalized. Enter CDFIs. Because we know that childcare is a patchwork system where working parents need not just one center, often need a care center, they need supplemented by family care, they're supplemented by auxiliary care, the sector is really not well served by any one type of financial product or services, which is what we need to explore. So today we're helping to give visibility to the important work that's being done. You're going to hear from CDFIs from different kinds of places, different kinds of entities, banks, loan funds, those types of entities that are CDFIs that are here to talk about what they're doing in this arena and how we might expand. I will say, as with other parts of the community development ecosystem, it takes strong partnerships to create necessary sets of support needed to scale this work, and scale is the optimal word here. Banks, CDFIs, government, philanthropy, all have very important roles. So on behalf of the CDFI Fund and the Department of Treasury, I want to welcome you to this very important convening, and we're looking forward to these discussions today to see how we can further the work and CDFIs do in financing childcare. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcia, and thank you to all of you for being here. My name is Susanna Fritzberg, and I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Consumer Policy at the U.S. Treasury Department. Really pleased to be part of today's conversation, not only because of the importance of accessible, affordable childcare for consumers and households' bottom lines, but because of the importance of ensuring that the diverse entrepreneurs and practitioners in this sector are included in the small business economy and in the financial system. I'm also very excited that we get to kick off today's panels by hearing directly from the providers and business owners that are so vital for our economy. I'm very pleased to be joined by Yolandra Powell of Abundant Love Christian Daycare, Latanta Godbolt of Small Wonders Family Daycare in Philadelphia, Sylvia Cruz of LTH Infant and Toddlers in Washington, D.C., and Joanna Cuellar of Springfield Bilingual Care Center in Springfield, Virginia. Between just these four entrepreneurs, this group has leveraged a variety of financing tools, including credit cards, grants and loans from CDFIs, PPP loans and other SBA loans, funding from state and local government, and financing from private financial institutions. I'm going to start by turning to the panel and asking you to tell us all a little bit about your work. What kinds of families do you serve? How did you begin your business, and where did you secure financing to get started? So we're going to just go down the line. Yolandra, I'm going to ask you to kick us off.
Good afternoon. I am Yolandra Powell, the founder, executive CEO of Abundant Love Christian Daycare in Durham, North Carolina. I've been in the industry for 30 years and been a business owner for 16 years. Of those 30 years, started off home base in my home and have successfully opened up 3 locations, currently have 1 large location with plans to build. Undoubtedly, COVID relief funds really helped me stabilize and secure and be able to serve working families. I serve families, predominantly 2-parent homes and single-parent homes as well. We have a diverse location, diverse center, diverse children, and I am definitely a huge advocate for continually to build high-quality childcare. I also provide technical assistance for providers to help them learn to thrive and grow their businesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry. Good afternoon. My name is Latanta Godbolt. I am the owner and operator of Small Wonders FCCH, located in Philadelphia. I started out as a family child care provider. I've been there for, my son is 16, so 16 years. I have over 22 years of experience in the field. My program is a Star 4 high quality program, and we serve children in the Philadelphia area who are predominantly low income single family homes. We also are recipients of lots of grant funding, which you'll hear about later on, that helped us expand to a larger center where about 90% of the children we serve have special needs. So over the years, it has been a lot of support from my local reinvestment fund, who've helped me expand, sustain, and continue to provide high quality care for the children and family in Philadelphia.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Cruz. I live in Washington, D.C. I've been in child care for over 20 years. I've been in home-based child care going on 9 years. The family that I serve are predominantly low-income, single families. We live in Ward 7. A lot of funding I've received is through the Reinvestment Fund, Mary Center, different people that have helped me to sustain my business. Thank you.
name is Joanna Cuellar. I'm from Springfield Bilingual Center, and I have more than 10 years working with the kids. The reason why I decided to open my daycare, it was I have my son, and I want to teach to him everything what I know, and I have a lot of experience, and I want to grow up with him. And also, my business now, it's 7 years, and we working with different families. My family is militaries, substitutes, nurse, who support to us when we are working in pandemic. And financial, when we started small but painting areas from my home, daycare, playgrounds, and fence for more take care of the kids. And everything, it was super hard because we don't have financial, we don't have money, but everything we need to pay with the credit cards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you, and it's really an honor to have you here. I'm going to start with a question to Latanta. And Latanta, I know you've worked with a CDFI in Philadelphia to secure funding for your business. As you mentioned, you experienced some disruption during the pandemic, as did most childcare providers. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience securing funding? And then also, because you do so much technical assistance with other providers, tell us a bit about what you've learned in the course of offering that around the needs that you're seeing in your provider community.
Sure. So working with the reinvestment fund was really easy because they paved the way for providers to set themselves up for success. Strategic planning, having coaches, mentors, and resources readily accessible to help support me in areas where I needed to grow, make revisions to my business plan. Some of my financial structures, they were in place, but they just needed a little bit more strengthening, and my coaches and mentors were able to help me modify things, like some of the platforms and different resources that I was using to help me, like track finances and, make sound decisions on where to invest my money or where to look for and access more funds. They really made that super easy for me. Without that help, without that foundation, like Johanna mentioned, I was doing it all out of pocket, just, struggling and piecing things together to try to support the high quality needs of the families that I was serving. And what I've learned along the way working with the reinvestment fund is you have to be organized, you have to have strategic plans, you have to know your numbers, you have to use actual business financial systems such as ProCare or QuickBooks or maybe even Gusto to help you run business analysis, profit and loss, see where your cash flow is, see where your deficits are, and figure out ways to strengthen those areas that you're weak in as a business owner. For me, I was trying to learn those things on my own, but with their help, I was able to get a much sound understanding of why it was important. Where do we need to modify our budget? How do we negotiate with some of the contractors that we needed to work with and get things like net 30s, not look for money out of my own pocket to always finance up front, but to really practice some solid business practices, which is what I've used to help a lot of the providers in the Philadelphia area. I'm a part of a organization that I help co-found, which is a nonprofit organization to support family providers in business growth strategies, development, reaching high quality expansions, how to get connected with reinvestment funds and other funders in our area. Without these tools, providers struggle and we don't make it. We don't have access to traditional funding like through banks because a lot of times we face a glass ceiling. as family providers. We're limited in the number of children we can care for, which limits the amount of revenue we have access to. And as a result, banks don't want to take a risk. And so reinvestment funds make it affordable, they make it easy, they make it accessible, and just helping providers understand that, and also setting up those systems to make sure their businesses meet the criteria on paper to go to a reinvestment fund and say, this is where I am, how can you help me move forward?
Thank you for that. And Ms. Sylvia, I'm going to go to you next. You operate as a home-based provider here in the district. Can you tell us about any unique financial challenges that you've experienced as a home-based provider and the sources of financing that you've used to maintain your operations?
Yes, ma'am. So my home, I bought my house in 2015. Unbeknownst to me, there was a lot of water damage within the basement area. As time went on, when I opened up my business, it didn't begin to manifest itself until later on, where rain was settled in. So in the meantime, until the reinvestment fund came along, I was asking people using my funding or family members helping me to maintain my business at the level that I wanted it to be, because this was my dream. Because due to the reinvestment fund coming in and offering different home providers within the DC area, and I was one of the lucky ones to receive that funding, I was able to procure a contractor to do the work. Unfortunately, that wasn't done properly. So with that being said, it left me, after it was done, I had to go back to where I started from by using my money, credit cards, whatever I needed to do to keep my business open, because I realized I was a fundamental person within that neighborhood where I live at. My parents have come to depend on me. The parents have become, they depended on me to provide them with something that they was not receiving. In Ward 7, I believe the problem is there's no village. There's no village in the minority area. So I wanted to be one of the ones to provide. And even if I had to go through my personal funding, whatever I had to do, nothing or no one other than God was going to shut me down. And I did what I had to do to maintain my business and to maintain a high quality business of care to my parents, who know that when they bring their children to me, they are receiving the love that they want them to receive when they're not around. They're there, we greet them, we love them. You know, I have some of my babies that be like, Cruz, so what's up, Cruz? And I'm like, it makes me feel good to hear a child say that to me. And I'm thankful to God that I'm able to provide them this service within my community. Thank you.
Yolandra, you started out as a home-based provider. You're now, as you mentioned, an owner and operator of a large center in North Carolina that has brought together several separate centers that you started, and you're in the process of building an additional center. You also provide technical assistance and coaching to other entrepreneurs similar to Latanta. Can you tell us more about the types of funding that you accessed or technical assistance that you accessed in the course of growing your business and what you've learned about your needs and the needs of other providers through that process?
So basically, to start off, I had a lot of support through family as well with startup, helping with getting fundings from banks, whether it was a line of credit, whether it was credit cards, just to get started initially. We struggled. My business has struggled. Having 2 locations, we struggled. And a lot of times people only saw the outside, but they didn't know the issues on the inside. They're just struggling to stay open. COVID hit, and I didn't know how these businesses were going to sustain. But I was grateful for the PPP loan and the SBA loans and all these other fundings that helped the businesses to sustain. And even during COVID, I was able to combine 2 small centers into 1 large center. My job as providing technical assistance for other providers that are trying to keep their doors from closing, I come in and try to help you build enrollment, build parent support, help you with your core values and policies. But undoubtedly, childcare is essential, and we are the vehicle for the workforce. And as I, promote high-quality childcare, I know that we're needing fundings, we're needing help, we're needing outside resources. COVID has showed us a lot, even with the children that we serve. A lot of services are needed. We need that support and those finances to help these businesses sustain. In North Carolina, I'm seeing doors are closing, centers that have been open 20, 30 years, and I believe they provide good quality childcare, but I'm seeing doors closing. And so I'm a high advocate for what can we do to help these doors remain open so that we can provide quality childcare for these children every day. Childcare is a haven and a safe place to a lot of families. Children come in, we don't know what they deal with when they leave our doors. And so we want to make sure that we are having those resources, those finances to continue to provide quality childcare. I love coaching. I love being providing technical assistance for childcares, but I've seen the tears. I've seen the owners say, I don't know if I'll be able to keep these doors open. The enrollment is full, the families are happy, but I don't have the support to be able to keep my doors open. I've seen centers close their doors, and it's sad. And these families are left. And I look at the families, even with 2 family homes, it's hard to be able to pay child care. And we want to be able to, as the cost of living is getting higher and higher and everything, and I know it varies from different states, but where I'm at, it's high. Cost of living is very high. And even 2-parent homes sometimes cannot afford child care. They need us so they can go to work. We are essential, and we want to continue to provide high-quality child care, but we're needing the investments, we're needing the finances to help us to be able to keep pushing and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Joanna, you operate a bilingual childcare business in Virginia, and I know you've accessed funding and assistance through a partnership model with the Latino Economic Development Center, a CDFI here in DC, and Fairfax County. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you worked with those organizations, and in particular about the technical assistance that you received?
Yes. So we're working with the Latin Economic Development Center. Was so easy and really helpful. The application for that was easy to navigate. The most recent grant was received a few months ago, which has helped too much for us because we can buy new furniture, we can provide more toys for the kids, we can change everything for them, we can get new materials for them. We are a bilingual center. We use the most books in my center, in Spanish and English, and we really need it because the most books in Spanish is more expensive than English. So, and also, I think if we have more assistance or more help financial, we can provide more environment for the kids, and we can give you better education to them. And we are really love our job, but we need help. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for some really incredible insights and powerful answers there. We've been a pretty efficient panel, so we'll do 1 or 2 more questions before we wrap up. But the thing that I want to ask you first is, and we'll again just go down the line here, you have an audience here of funders and policymakers, philanthropists, and others who work to support the childcare space. What do you want us to know? And what do you want others like those in this room to know about supporting businesses like yours?
Thank you. I'm very passionate about the childcare industry. I probably would not step down. I love it. I often say it's my occupation. It's what I love doing. I love it. I will probably retire doing this. And so I will say to policymakers or just those that are in the room, we need to keep this train moving. This train cannot stop. We have to keep this train moving by investing and doing what we need to do to continue to provide high-quality childcare, not just daycare, high-quality childcare. I'm a huge advocate for high-quality childcare and what that looks like. We want qualified teachers, credentials, degrees. We want to be able to compensate and be able to help them to live and enjoy this profession. We are essential. So I will say, let's keep this train moving. If it stopped, let's get it back moving, and so that we can continue to provide high-quality childcare. Thank you.
As you heard Yolandra say, we need high-quality certified teachers. I myself hold a master's degree in education. I'm a certified teacher. I do this work because I'm invested in the children and families in my community. I take a huge pay cut, and my family, my husband and I have 4 children, 3 in college. We rely on some of the same resources that our families rely on. I cannot afford a quality living based off of the investments that are poured into this industry. My counterparts and peers who have the same degrees and certifications as me have a totally different community. The access to resources they have is way different than what I have, and it is because of the profession I'm in, because of the lack of the resources that I have access to. Without the reinvestment fund, I wouldn't have been able to expand from my family child care to a center, even with my teaching degree and my master's degree. And so when we say we can't do this work without the investments, it's not optional. The children and family we serve deserve the same opportunities as their friends and peers in other communities. There's no reason that we in this industry should have to make a decision between choosing to do what we love and choosing what's gonna put food on the table. And, you know, for me, there isn't a day that goes by that I would change this career choice for the sake of making more money. My passion is in education. I eat, sleep, and breathe education. Every opportunity I have to invest in myself and my community, I take full advantage of, because I know the difference that education makes. I know the opportunities that I've had afforded to me because I do have education versus some of my counterparts who don't have that. And so when we think about investments and we think about where we're gonna put our dollars, the highest return is going to come back when we invest in our children, because they are our future. They will drive the economy. They will make all the decisions about where our finances will go. So invest in them now or pay later.
So a minute ago, I got overwhelmed, full, as I said. But my main concern is that the investors, or to understand that I'm speaking from family child care. Family child care is going through a rough time right now. We're very devalued. We're not paid our worth. We do the work of what everybody do in the center, but we carry it all by ourselves. And then we have to care for our families. We have to pay our mortgage and the other things that come in. So understand, without the reinvestment fund or LIFT or all the other CDFI that have contributed to my business and other family childcare businesses, we will be, some of us that really love this work would still be here, like me. But it's a struggle. It's a daily struggle, because we have people that come to us, look to us to provide them with services. We have employees that look to us to make sure they be able to pay their rent, be able to take care of their family. I went to the point where I didn't even pay myself, because as a home provider, you're supposed to provide for yourself. I'm also considered a teacher. So I will sacrifice myself so my workers that work for me, that get up every day, come to work, put in the time, put in the effort. Everything I ask of them, they are doing it. To give us that time, they deserve to be paid what they're worth. Family child care is it is not below anybody. It's just as above, on the same level as everybody else, because we are the beginning for our children later on. They start with us. Family child care started with family child care. That's it. It started with family child care, with the village, with our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents. It started with them. So why are we being put down on the lowest totem pole? So as a funder, understand we need y'all to, because for me, black and brown, in a black and brown community, it's hard for me to go and get a loan, because there are times when, as a matter of fact, between October and December, I only had 3 children enrolled. So it's hard to get children, and because of that, I had to make the sacrifice. If you come to work for me, I will make sure you get paid. My mortgage will get paid if I got to use my credit card. Whatever I got to do, I'm going to make sure to maintain. But why should I have to continue to do that when we are here supporting your children? Whether they're black, brown, whatever color they are, whatever nationality they are, they deserve to have that village. They deserve to know that they are appreciated, they are wanted, they deserve to be educated, and if we're here willing to put in that time to do it, we need the funders to realize, if you pay a center $5, why can't we give $5 as a home provider, okay? Every dollar you provide to a center, we should be entitled to that, because we do just as much work, if not more. I thank you.
I think everybody loves our job.
Yes.
It is sometimes hard.
Very. It's okay, it's okay.
But if we have more foundations, more help, we can give you more. Right now, we working for them because how my friends, they say, they are the future. Mm-hmm. And the first years is the most important for the kids. Yes, and we working for that. If we have more foundations to support us, we can give you better education, give you better teachers with education, really great, music, dancing. We can give you more. Sometimes we do everything, cooking, nurse. We are psychologists for kids. We are a singer. We are Zumbas. We're doing everything. Yes. But sometimes we need help. And that's why we are here. Thanks.
Please join me in thanking Yolandra, Latanta, Sylvia, and Joanna. We're honored by the chance to learn from you, and as we take our seats, I'm going to introduce Martine Gordon, the Senior Advisor for Early Childhood Development at the Administration for Children and Families. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna, although I will say I don't think there's anything more that needs to be said after that, so I will do my best. Good afternoon. As I was introduced, I work at the Administration for Children and Families. It's in the Department of Health and Human Services. My colleague, Dr. Ruth Friedman, is the Director of the Office of Child Care. She was supposed to be here today with you all. Unfortunately, she had a family situation she needed to attend to, but she asked me to express her apologies for not being able to join you as planned. And on behalf of Dr. Friedman and truly all of the Department of Health and Human Services, I want to thank the Domestic Policy Council, the Gender Policy Council, and the Department of Treasury for hosting this conversation today, for their partnership as all of us across the Biden-Harris administration prioritize the stabilization of the child care sector, as others have mentioned, and you all know. Childcare is critical work to support families and our economy. We've said that before, we will say it again multiple times. I also want to thank the CDFI leadership and staff for ongoing partnership and support of the childcare sector. You've heard a little bit about that from our childcare provider panels. You'll hear more about that going forward. And I want to point out that the Office of Childcare has an ongoing collaboration with CDFIs across the country through its National Technical Assistance Center work. And I know our entire team sees these ongoing partnerships as critical to supporting childcare systems nationwide. And mostly, I want to thank the childcare panelists who just shared their stories with us. For being here, for showing up, for sharing your stories, and for being here in person. And so I want to thank you, because I know that many of you had to find substitutes for the children in your care to be here in person, and that is a major feat. It's a big deal to afford and find a high-quality sub. Much like everything else, when you're operating a childcare business, as we just heard, it's expensive to do it right. And that's why we're here today. So we can come together around a shared goal of the financial stability of the childcare sector. And at HHS, we're doing a number of things to get at this goal, not the least of which was publishing a final rule earlier this year for the Child Care and Development Fund program that will do a number of things, including reduce costs for families that receive child care subsidies, increase child care options for those families, and, most relevant to our conversation today, improve the financial stability of the child care providers that serve these families. And to that last point, the rule requires states to pay child care providers more fairly and on time. A novel idea, we know. But again, that's why we're here, because there's a lot of work we need to do to stabilize the child care sector, and we're all committed to doing it together. CDFIs have a long history of supporting childcare, as again, you'll hear more in a bit, both at the individual program level, as we heard from our wonderful childcare experts, and at the systems level. And throughout the country, local CDFIs have leveraged and raised capital for childcare systems and research. They've developed guides for family childcare providers to start their businesses. They've supported childcare provider professional development and so much more. And through the pandemic, CDFIs rallied philanthropic support alongside public investments so that providers could stay open for families. President Biden secured a historic investment for childcare with the American Rescue Plan Act and other COVID relief dollars. And one of the many partners that came along beside those funds to provide support were CDFIs. One example at the state level in New Mexico, the Early Childhood Education and Care Department proved successful in leveraging American Rescue Plan Act dollars and partnering with a local CDFI, among other partners, to launch a child care business support initiative, where they awarded grants to licensed child care centers and family child care operators. And then they coupled those grants with business training in both English and Spanish in the state. And we hear that work has been so successful, the state will continue it beyond the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, which we're really excited about. Again, that's just one example, though. We know that CDFIs can continue to help today as the Child Care and Development Fund lead agencies prepare to implement the measures in the final rule I mentioned earlier. And that will help expand child care subsidy access for families. We believe many of the provisions in the final rule will make it easier for child care programs to accept subsidies and potentially even expand to serve more families. And one example of how CDFIs can assist lead agencies in this moment is by leveraging funding to help build, expand, and improve child care facilities. Thank you. Child care providers will need access to capital, we'll keep saying that, to create new slots and increase the supply of child care offerings, and to renovate or expand their facilities. And who better than CDFIs to connect child care providers with architects, project managers, and engineers? Many of us who go into the field of early care and education, we don't realize the amount we'll have to learn about facilities issues. But the child care program facility is a critical component of the learning and care environment. And CDFIs are well positioned to continue to support child care providers to not only access capital, but build the relationships with critical experts in other sectors who can help them ensure their programs are the highest quality as they expand to serve more children. You heard Directors Tandon and Klein speak earlier to how much this administration cares about care. And not just that care is accessible and affordable for families, but also about the care workforce. It is no secret, yes, it is no secret that care workforce is largely women, working long hours, performing critical work, and not getting paid very much. At the same time, families are having trouble affording high-quality childcare if they can even find a program with an open spot for their child at all. President Biden wants to change that on both fronts, so families can afford childcare and childcare providers can earn a decent living. It's why we at HHS finalized the Child Care and Development Fund rule. It's why we proposed an additional rule that will increase Head Start staff wages, and why President Biden himself proposed a $600 billion, that's with a B, investment to expand access to childcare and preschool. President Biden understands that young children deserve high-quality early care and education, while at the same time, childcare providers deserve to be paid what they're worth. Yes. It will take a comprehensive investment, including public and private partnerships, to bring financial stability to the sector, and I'm grateful to have partners like all of you in this work, like CDFIs, and I look forward to continuing our work together. I know the administration does as well. So thank you so much for allowing this time with me. Hopefully I didn't totally bore you after our wonderful panel, and I will pass it to Jeannie Bonds, the Director of the Office of Community and Economic Development in the Department of Treasury.
Good afternoon. You heard from our wonderful panel of child care providers. So now we want to turn to just 4 of the CDFIs across the country. There's many CDFIs across the nation. If you're not familiar with them, you can go to cdfi.gov and look up one that's in your area. But these individuals lead community development financial institutions that really lift up individuals, families, businesses in low-income areas. And you heard how important a few minutes ago that capital is to the child care providers. So now I want to turn to the individuals who really stay up late at night knitting together that capital to try to figure out how they can help both centers and home-based providers provide those essential services to the children and to make our economy work. So let me introduce you to our panel. We have Bevan Parker-Cherkev with LISC. On the end, Sanja Wells with City First Bank, Latasha DeVos with Reinvestment Fund, and Dan Nessenbaum with LIF. So to get us started, let me just go down the line and tell us a little bit about your organization, how you first got involved in financing child care businesses, both centers and home-based. And what did you deploy that was most successful, whether it's operations or real estate or both? I'll start with you, Dan.
You don't want to start, Dan?
I'll start with you this time.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here, and we really appreciate the Biden administration's focus here. And to follow that panel is really actually kind of nerve-wracking. We're looking at our 4 bosses right there. Yes. Those are our judges, but I heard anchors, I heard essential services, I heard child care's infrastructure, and really first responders. And I think that's why we do this work, because of your passion. So briefly, I'm at the Low Income Investment Fund. We're a national CDFI. We've been doing this work for about 25 years, both center-based care and home-based care, and in an arena we call early care and education. All of us do, because we recognize that you all are really educators. As I thought a little bit about this, we had the question in advance. It's interesting, I think, that all of our work has tracked the arc of our understanding of children, meaning 25 years ago or more, farther back, LIFT started this work as a welfare to work contract with the city of San Francisco. And that's where we started, that long ago, in doing that kind of work, which of course was to support parents. When we got into the work and got into the spaces and looked at the facilities, we realized, holy cow, you know, these facilities need to be better. The classroom is the third teacher or the second teacher or the fourth teacher. Never the fourth, but mostly the second. And that was about children's health needs and the environmental issues around paint and carpeting, et cetera. But now, as it was suggested, we're even more driven by brain science, because we now know that 90% of brain development happens before the age of 5, and as most everybody knows, it's really crucial between 0 and 2. And as somebody said it very elegantly, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and you have to start out right. So lastly, and really in some ways, we've all turned finally to the operators, recognizing that these are business women. You've heard from them yourselves, and they're really mission-driven social entrepreneurs. You've heard that too. And if we learn nothing else through the pandemic, it's that child care is infrastructure. So triple benefit there for children, for parents, for operators. That's why we do the work. We at LIFT doubled down on this work about 2018, 2019 in our strategic plan, focusing on racial equity and deciding where the areas of deepest disparity were. And that for us was early care and education and affordable housing. We work primarily with state and local governments. We do advisory work, and we support both government and private funders to pass through mostly grant funding. And we all together do a lot of that work, and together do a lot of federal advocacy together. So in total, Life Today, we've done about $450 million of funding in this space, mostly grant pass-through. We've helped 380,000 children, and we've gone on, because I think the conversation needs to move on, not just to create more funding, but to think about co-locating childcare with affordable housing, to think about climate resiliency and how we take advantage of the greenhouse gas fund, to direct capital to these kinds of folks and these providers who are not on the radar screen in most cases. And lastly, we're training other CDFIs to do this work in partnership when we do receive these grant contracts. So we do a lot, as do all of our colleagues, and we work together on many of this work.
Latasha.
Hello. Reinvestment Fund is a national mission-driven financial institution. We create opportunity for underserved people and places through partnerships. And it's through those partnerships that allow us to strengthen our ability to serve communities through our lending work, our policy solutions, analytics, and also our capacity building and capital access programs, which is where our ECE work lives. Reinvestment Fund has always financed childcare, but it was in 2013 when that work really deepened and became more prominent when our policy solutions team received funding from the William Penn Foundation in order to map out and do a study of supply and demand in the city of Philadelphia to understand where gaps existed in childcare access for children. That study showed that there was a significant shortage. In fact, it was even more acute for those programs that are designated high quality. And that lack of access adversely impacts lower income families the most. So it was through that study that we were fortunate to receive funding from the William Penn Foundation and Vanguard Strong Start for Kids program so that we could implement the Fund for Quality, which is an expansion initiative geared towards increasing high-quality childcare seats for low-income families. Since 2013, we're still running. The fund has been capitalized up to $20 million, and we have been able to create over 3,000 new childcare seats, including LaTanta's wonderful program in Philadelphia. And we've been able to adapt and replicate that model in ways that it makes sense to include home-based childcare providers, such as in Washington, D.C., as the funding that Ms. Sylvia Cruz alluded to, and other models as well.
Sanjit, please tell us about City First Bank.
Okay, so City First Bank is a nationally chartered community development financial institution. We are a bank. We are a minority development depository institution, as well as a benefit corporation. And we have been doing, providing financing since our inception, really. We've been committed to ensuring that the communities that we are committed to serving have access to both quality and equitable educational foundation, and to close the gap in quality education in our underserved communities, in particularly our Black and brown communities. We recognize the importance that quality early care and education play in preparing the next generation for the future and for producing educated citizens that can contribute to, in a meaningful way, to the communities that they live in and to our country and our society at the same time. So the work that all of these women do is, is critical to our, to our communities and to the United States. So City First Bank has been dedicated to doing this kind of work for long term, and we will continue to do it. We also do work in the affordable housing space, education, nonprofits, and small businesses. So, education is important. So we, provide centers. We don't do home-based, but we do provide to centers, and we support them as small businesses as well.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Bevan. I'm the director at the Local Initiative Support Corporation, which is a national CDFI. We are also a longstanding nonprofit community development organization. We forge to make resilient and vibrant communities across America. A big key in the work that we do is partnering with residents and community to close systemic gaps in wealth, health and opportunity, and advancing racial equity so that people and places can thrive. We've been doing work in early childhood and quality childcare infrastructure for over 2 decades now, and we do that in the form of facilities development and organizational capacity building through our technical assistance, grants, and loan financing. Again, we work really strongly in partnership with key community stakeholders in order to educate, and including those educators as the people that know the most, and we need to really center their experience and their work as they try and navigate these systems so that we can come up with hyper-localized solutions to help support their growth, sustainability, and power. We really want to focus on these childcare providers, especially women of color, and ensure that they have access to the supports and the resources they need to thrive. As I said, we really need to focus and zero in on what their experience has been so that we can create solutions that best meet their needs where they are in their business's organizational life cycle. I think the technical assistance piece that we all sort of endeavor on really helps to support these providers throughout their growth trajectories, understanding where they are, how we can support, build out scaffolding, work with community partners, help them navigate the resources, be it loans, grants, or whatever sort of access to capital that they need in order to really build out that quality infrastructure that we talked about. That's so critical for these young children in their early developmental years. I want to just say too, absent public operating dollars and standalone funding to support facilities, we're really piecing together a lot of financing to make this work. As we heard, there's credit cards involved, there's probably borrowing from family members, there's some that make it to a CDFI, but often a lot of folks don't. And so I just want to put that call out there too.
Bevan, could you tell us a little bit about the Children's Facilities Network and what you're fostering with that group as well?
Yeah, so we're also, a big portion of us here today are part of the National Children's Facilities Network, which is a membership organization for CDFIs to come together and learn from one another about best practices, solutions, challenges that we're all facing as we help to support childcare facilities across the country. We really encourage folks that are sort of in the small business world and, have some loans that end up as to childcare centers without even recognizing it, to those that have more robust portfolios. And so it really fosters this community where we can work together and do some political advocacy at the same time.
Latasha, tell us a little bit about Reinvestment Fund and your technical assistance. We heard from Sylvia where she was able to do some work with her house through a grant. Just tell us a little bit about how you all pull that together.
For sure. Technical assistance is key to making many of these real estate development projects happen, especially for childcare providers. So particularly with the Fund for Quality model, we see technical assistance as being comprehensive and consisting of 3 main parts. First, there's the guided organizational planning, which we partner with Public Health Management Corporation, who is an anchor in early childhood quality programming. And they are able to work with providers individually so that they're able to access business supports to strengthen their business plans, understand operational models on how to braid and blend different funding sources to make their revenue work post-expansion. Services to assist with marketing and planning for serving new children, and what does that ramp up period look like as they're looking to grow sustainably. And also the staffing model, which is intrinsic to EC in general, but especially as you're pursuing high quality operations and understanding what does it look like, what kind of staff do I need to recruit, and how will I sustain staff at this level, and how will I do that without being paid for a certain period of time before I reach my quality level where I can receive higher reimbursements. So it's a lot of math and planning going on. In addition to that, there's the guided project planning that needs to occur. Childcare facilities and the environment that young children are in is extremely important and complicated. And the project development involves having architects who understand childcare, understands what the child and staff ratios are, and how to maximize the use of space while not jeopardizing quality for the children. Having childcare licensing consultants who can guide providers through the very complicated childcare licensing system, zoning requirements, regulatory requirements for buildings, and also monitoring the project as it's underway and troubleshooting those inevitable issues that comes up when you're embarking on these huge construction projects, and doing all that so that providers are still able to focus on what they need to do to ensure the learning and development and safety of children. And thirdly would be the tools and resources that providers are able to meet funding requirements and be in compliance so that they can be good stewards of whether it's grant funds or good borrowers.
Dan, I know that LIF has started thinking about some different models for training and technical assistance. Could you tell us a little about that?
Sure. I mean, I'll amplify what Latasha said. I mean, the first thing I think just to emphasize is that you've heard us talk about capital and you've heard us talk about technical assistance. That is really the unique thing about CDFIs. We all like to say we're capital plus. And whether we're working to support government or private corporations, employers who should be caring much more about daycare, or foundations or banks and their CRA rating, we can deliver capital with the technical assistance that you've begun to hear about. So that is a crucial part of what we're doing. And I would say, I would second everything that Latasha said. It's business, it's finance, it's marketing, it's HR, and then it's really real estate development. And so we've published design guides because you all know how to run a business, but you're not near to run a real estate project, and so we're able to provide that kind of assistance. And in addition, the bad news is there's not enough capital. The good news is there are now some state and local funding programs. But we often work with the providers very closely to actually help them apply for those programs, because it is kind of a dizzying array of having to go to 3 or 4 different places to assemble the capital. So that's another really kind of crucial part. We also believe there needs to be more capacity building in our industry. You're looking at folks who've been doing this for a long time and leaders. There's others of us in the field. But when and as we at LIF have been able to secure some of the grant contracts from state or local government, but it's not where we have an office, we will actually partner with a CDFI, and we've done that in Oregon, and we've done that in Houston, and we're looking at other areas to sort of be their backbone organization, but also to help them move into this space, because frankly, CDFIs have done amazing jobs, as you've heard, in affordable housing and in charter schools and in healthcare clinics. We're getting around to you now. And we've got to do a better job, but we don't have the tools and resources. There aren't as many subsidy sources or financing programs. Child care has been emphasized by the regulators in the new CRA Act, and it's certainly been lifted up by the Biden administration and the CDFI fund, which we applaud for doing that. So for us as CDFIs, we are great partners because we bring the expertise, we bring the capital plus. You've heard it, we're nimble. I mean, who else can provide grants and loans and PPP loans, which we all did to support child care providers. We're a steward of capital. We all have strong balance sheets. We've all been responsible. We can attract philanthropy, and we can attract corporate funding, and we can blend all of that together to sort of come up with a financing structure that works, because it has to be very low cost for the operators who, frankly, running a child care business is kind of crazy. Like, you wouldn't want to do it. It's because it's so people intensive, particularly for infants and toddlers, that there's just very little money to pay debt service. It can work. Obviously, the bank is doing it, and others are doing it, but that's not it's not scalable. So we need to blend all that capital together. And I think lastly, we bring an equity lens to this work, and that's really important. We are intentional about trying to bring more capital to this space, because it has been ignored and overlooked. And again, we're in a room today where there's a lot of good intention and a lot of funding that may be coming, and we just need to, we need to do a good job and bring more capital to you.
Sanja, there's a number of providers listening on the live stream. So tell them what it means for City First Bank as a CDFI, it's an MDI, it's a bank. What does that mean to a provider in terms of accessing products from you all?
So, you know, we work very closely with our educators and with our child care, operators to help them really garner and really own their facilities and control their occupancy costs. That's really, really important because, as you've heard, it's very expensive in order to operate these centers, and we want them to really be able to concentrate on the important work, which is the kids. But so we do offer real estate acquisition and renovation financing through conventional and commercial financing, as well as SBA 504, 7A programs. In addition, we have a very unique product that is unique to City First Bank called the Unitranche that we offer in partnership with our nonprofit loan fund, City First Enterprises, to allow small business owners to acquire their facilities with lower equity injection requirements. So that's really, really important in this particular case because, we want all of the funds that they have to go into doing the work that they do. We provide funding for growth and expansion so that providers can expand and increase their capacity. We provide loans for furniture, fixtures, and equipment, all of which is very important, as well as lines of credit for short-term working capital needs. So as a bank, ours, the products and services that we have is much more traditional, but we do provide support to navigate the banking and lending process to our borrowers and prospects, understanding credit and their financials and how that works, and how it all plays together, understanding how important it is to have a team and resources. And we work very closely with our borrowers to make sure that they have access to all of the support that they need from an accounting perspective, financial perspective, as well as even insurance providers, legal support, all of those areas which are critical to operating a business on a day-to-day basis. And without those, without that infrastructure and that support and that information and those tools, oftentimes, they're excellent operators, but they need this additional support. And so that's how City First Bank really does.
Thank you. I want to give you each some time to talk about the fact that you're all thought leaders. CDFIs are thought leaders across all of these topics and products that you offer. So give us your best advice for other CDFIs, and I'm not going to limit it to just CDFIs after spending some time with Dan today. Please feel free to give some advice to the White House and Treasury, philanthropy and financial institutions as to what you've learned and where do we go as an industry in supporting child care providers. And I'll start with you, Bevan.
Okay, great. I want to say we talk at length, and we've talked a lot today about the challenges in the system, and I want to be really, really clear that just because there are system challenges doesn't mean that providers themselves are challenging borrowers or grantees. Like, it's very, very clear. They're working within a system that is troublesome and under-resourced, and there's a common misconception around risk, and these nonprofits and businesses are working with our most vulnerable populations and underserved communities, and we need to remember that and center them in our work as we move forward. So I just want to think about that as we think about moving forward, and consider our equitable resourcing and deployment of capital. It really means we have to understand the complexities and community context in addition to the key partnerships that are there. This is not unlike how we would, dive into underwriting any new sector or industry, right? We really have to dive in, recognize that there's some challenges, complexity, but as CDFIs, we are built to be innovative, to dive in, to come up with creative solutions, and really figure out how we can leverage those public-private partnerships that we can move this forward and really help support these providers, again, wherever they are in their growth continuum, whatever their profile looks like, home-based, center-based. We really need to think about how we can embrace this and move forward so that we're marshaling capital in these really critical ways to places where it's most needed.
Great, thank you. Latasha, give us your best advice.
Well, I think a lot has been said, and I truly echo Bevan, and I would just encourage other CDFIs to understand that investing in childcare is a worthy way to embody your organizational values. In order to advance equity, funding strategies must consider that not all families want the same type of childcare. It's easier to look at the larger child cares that may be more bankable or profitable in terms of investing in them. But again, every family does not want that type of care. And in fact, most care is happening in these smaller facilities, which are harder to invest in.
So I have a 16-point plan, but I'll actually just try to boil it down quickly. I think it's time. Look, we all are issuing a clarion call for more funding, but there are also things we can do in the interim. We need to do both, and we need to leverage some of the existing funding sources. All of us through the National Child Care Facilities Network have called for a facilities fund at the federal level, and whether that's at the CDFI fund, which has done a brilliant job doing the same thing for healthcare or for disabilities work or for fresh foods, we think it's time for one for childcare. And we think that could be leveraged with and or combined with the Child Care Community Development Block Grant. We need a facilities fund because that's what's going to spark and spur more of the work that we can do here. We're already beginning to see states do that. We were talking earlier about the Biden program for the CHIPS manufacturers, which includes a child care mandate. And states are already seeing that in order to be competitive and in order to absorb the jobs and the impact that these large plants will have, local communities need a child care plan. And so we need to help them prepare for that. The second thing you've heard is really technical assistance and capacity building, and that's great, and it's really important, and someone needs to pay for it. And we've seen now in the greenhouse, the recent award out of EPA, the Greenhouse Gas Fund awards, have a very significant amount of funding for capacity building because there is a clear understanding that to deploy the capital that needs to be deployed, you have to build the infrastructure. We've built it on a patchwork basis, like you're working on a patchwork basis. We need something that's more sustainable and at scale. Third, we have existing channels. We have, just to pick one, the low-income housing tax credit, which builds buildings in which we could co-locate childcare facilities where there's a base building already built and we can help with the providers and provide the technical assistance. There are ways to encourage the states, we think, to favor or to give more points for a low-income housing tax credit project that has child care incorporated in it. There is already some allowance for community facilities in that program, but that's restricted by qualified census tract, and we could expand that to increase the amount of work that we're doing. CRA, the new reform, has a component of it that are special purpose credit programs, and those are targeted lending initiatives, and we're doing that work funded by a major bank, which has loans and grants to actually bring the racial equity intent that we want to bring to this work and to deliver that kind of capital. Lastly, again, an NCFN recommendation, we need a comprehensive national needs assessment. If we don't have the data and we don't have the mapping, we all know anecdotally that there aren't enough facilities and the quality levels aren't high enough and there are licensed and unlicensed. We need a comprehensive national needs assessment because that is something then to build upon and that will actually be a stronger foundation for funding. So that's really on behalf of all of us because we've all developed those solutions together.
It is.
But I would like your vote. I would like your vote. Yeah.
I'm going to give Sanja the last word on advice for CDFIs.
The last word is this is an important segment. I mean, that's what's really most important here. And, we need more providers. We need a comprehensive plan. We definitely need more grant funding. We need to be able to really stack these, all of these programs together. We do that quite a bit. We partner, we do participations with other CDFIs. We work very closely with our local government, and we just need more providers that are willing to provide the technical support. We need to make sure that you're able to meet the providers where they are. I think that's really what's important. That technical support, it's not one and done. It's when someone comes to you, you have to take the time, the energy, and be fully committed to, helping and supporting the providers and getting what they need and making sure that they understand. So wherever they are, it's like make sure that you understand that. And I think I couldn't stress that more, That's the most important piece of it all.
So I'd like to thank all 4 of the CDFI panelists. If you're a child care provider, I can't stress enough, these are your partners. They'll help you solve the problem. If they don't have the product or the solution, they'll figure it out with you. So seek out your CDFIs for support for your child care businesses. And as the panel exits, I'm going to ask Jonathan Huidig with the Kresge Foundation to come up.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Hoy. I'm with the Kresge Foundation based in Detroit, Michigan. And first of all, really grateful for the call to action that was issued by our providers and entrepreneurs here up front. And the reminder, right, that this is an issue of racial equity. This is an issue of gender equity. This is an issue of resourcing in communities that have historically been disinvested over time. And I think that is why this is the moment for public-private partnerships to catalyze and accelerate place-based efforts, to leverage the community development finance system to support and strengthen childcare systems. I want to illustrate a couple of examples of how public-private partnerships might be able to do some of this work and strengthen childcare systems through the CDFI partnerships. The first is an effort we've engaged in alongside the Packard, Kellogg, Buffett, Heising-Simons, and other foundations to leverage the Investing in America agenda to strengthen local childcare systems. We recognize that a strong and inclusive infrastructure workforce requires equitable access to childcare. We've talked about that today. However, we also know that in many communities, childcare systems need sustainable sources of funding to expand. Right? We have all of this infrastructure workforce, but we need to resource the childcare systems in order for them to expand to offer the supply that this workforce needs. Thanks to the Biden administration's CARE agenda and its all-of-government approach to childcare, this is the moment, right? We have this moment now to partner in more innovative ways, in more sustainable ways, and in more inclusive ways. We believe that the Investing in America Childcare Partnership has an opportunity to leverage federal infrastructure funding to develop cross-sectoral approaches that build on the work that CDFIs have been doing in local communities for a long time. Thanks to our partners at LIF, at LISC, at IFF, we've been working with federal partners to identify ways in which this agenda can both be a catalyst and a source of resourcing for childcare systems. Thanks to the administration's CARE agenda, federal infrastructure funding can be a catalyst to bring all this funding to childcare systems. We know that there's a CHIPS childcare requirement. We know that there's DOT guidance on using surface transportation funding for childcare, but in order for that to be implemented on the ground and impact local communities, we need CDFIs to help blend and braid these sources of funding that are not traditional to early childhood, to be able to blend and braid infrastructure dollars to create capital stacks. And we know that there are opportunities to leverage the expertise and the capacity of CDFIs. We heard from our CDFI panel, we heard from our providers that CDFIs are not just sources of capital. They provide capacity building. They provide a beginning to end approach to support childcare providers, and we need them to help do that kind of translation between the sources of federal funding to get them to ground. And this is a moment for philanthropy, for the corporate sector, to work with local communities to rethink how federal resources can sustain and strengthen childcare systems. And efforts like this are not unique. CDFIs have been doing this forever. We heard that today. In Detroit, we've worked with IFF to build new early childhood facilities, to renovate existing ones, to redesign operating models with providers to ensure financial sustainability. In these cases, the role of a CDFI with the capacity to provide beginning to end support for development projects is critical. They are the developer for these projects. They build the capital stack. They are the lenders. They hold the funds, and they're able to blend and braid these sources of federal, state, private funds, develop an operating model. And what that has meant is that we've been able to deploy more forms of capital beyond traditional grants to build more sustainable capital and operating models for early childhood centers. But what that means for kids is that we have mixed income classrooms. We have full day, full year programming. We have arts programming. We have music programming. We can renovate indoor and outdoor spaces and more. And that's what our CDFI partners have been able to lead on. And so behind all this, right, are private partnerships, public-private partnerships that are led by CDFIs, supported by philanthropic funds, supported by public funding, strengthened by supportive federal and state policy, and that requires deep, deep place-based relationships developed over time. But we believe that this is the moment that right now we can meet the moment of the funding that's available to support providers in ways that we haven't before. So we're excited for that. We're excited to partner in these ways. And thank you for having us. Right now, I'm going to pass it over to Noel Pollo, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Community and Economic Development Policy at Treasury.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. My name is Noel Andres Pollo. I'm for the Treasury Department. My first words here were in Spanish because this day has gotten me thinking about my first words, right? And my first words were in Spanish. And why is that? Both of my parents were working class folks. They needed to get to work. And so they left me as an infant in someone's care. Actually, in two grandmothers, two abuelitas. And that's, I stand here and I'm now at the Treasury Department, certainly because of my parents, but also because of my caregivers, right? And, But why, the Treasury Department has been very engaged in pulling this panel together. Why? Well, part of it is that the words come from the boss, right? I really appreciated the quote from President Biden that was given earlier. Care is the work that makes all other work possible, right? So we've heard a lot over the past couple of years about what happens when supply chains get messed up, right? The whole economy goes crazy, right? Well, it's an imperfect metaphor, but when the supply chain that produces our human beings, right, in this country gets messed up, you get all kinds of downstream problems, right? So it's a slow supply chain. It's a much slower one, right? But it begins with our care providers, right? It begins with shaping these children. And it's great to go to work every day and love who you work for. If you haven't gone and looked up a little bit of what Secretary Yellen has to say about the care economy and why one of the towering figures of labor economics of the past, I'll be respectful to the Secretary and not say what period of time, but someone who we all look to as a major figure in this space speaks in such compelling ways about the care economy, both because she understands what it means in her own family and the families of people that she meets. But as a macroeconomist, she understands that to be a steward of our future, this is fundamental, right? And so, if you want to scale anything in this economy, you have to mobilize capital, and we know that. And so that means those of us who are in the business of mobilizing capital need to think about how do you finance this? How do you make this work? And so before I came to the Treasury Department, I was a lender. I ran a national CDFI, and I had my lender, my investor ears on today. And I heard good investments is what I heard, right? So when I hear, we can do more with more resources, I hear about a return on investment proposition, right, that I believe, right? Have you ever read those grandiose CEO biographies, right? The great person who made the great company great, right? And when it gets down to it, so many of those are about people with tenacity. People who just no wasn't an option. Failure wasn't an option. I heard a lot of great CEO stories today, right? That I look forward to reading that biography to think about what I can do with my future. When we talk about, it was funny, one of the CDFI panelists said, this is Dan, I think it was you, you just look at the basic business proposition, this is crazy, right? You go to an average kind of fancy Wall Street, person walking out of their office, and you say, let me show you a business model. Here's something I want you to come and do. No, not invest in, I want you to do it. And they'd say, that's too hard. What are you, crazy? What kind of person in their right mind does that? But when it is your occupation, right? When it is who you are, right? And when you are that person in your community, right? Why did my parents put me in that daycare? They put me in that daycare because they wanted my first words to come out in Spanish, right? Because they knew that there was somebody at the center of the community who was going to guarantee my future, right? And so when that is what we are investing in, right? That is a complex economic proposition that is not just sitting on a balance sheet. And yet we must finance those balance sheets. And we heard very clearly the role of public investment here, right? That, I heard that public investment in this space is not optional, is what you said, right? And so I think that we need to think about how it is that we scale in this space, both by sharpening our pencils, knowing what's investable, right, in a real way, but also understanding that there is an extraordinary role for public investment here. And I will just say that you have already heard here from people who are doing the work, to people who are financing the work, to people who are in policy trying to support this work. We have a lot more to build, but we have a system that can really move capital, can really make change. We just need to invest in it. And so I want to turn it over now to Heather Boucher from the Council of Economic Advisors to wrap us up. Thank you very much for coming and for listening today.
Okay, I didn't know that when I was going to follow the Treasury official that it'd be such a hard act to follow. You were fantastic. Wow, so you're ending with the economist, but he's the one who said human supply chains. So let's just note that. I did not say that. So I was only able to join for the second half today, but it was really exciting to see this panel. I'm so glad that you were all able to be here today, and to all of you online and so many friends, new and old, here in the audience today, thank you. This is a really important conversation, a really important event. Accessible and affordable childcare is an all-hands-on-deck issue. And as an economist, I want to echo what Noel said and so many people said here. There is no other issue that is as important for the strength of the foundation of our economy. And yet, we know that the market for childcare is fundamentally broken in many ways. Families struggle to find the care that meets their needs, that they can afford, while childcare providers struggle to stay afloat and pay their employees a living wage. It's math that is just, quite frankly, challenging. And this is more important than ever because more families rely on this childcare market. The number of young children living in a household in which all parents in this home are working has grown to over 60% of families. That's the majority, driven, of course, by the fact that women are no longer full-time stay-at-home caregivers. And this year, female labor force participation hit a record high, going back to the 1940s when Rosie the Riveter went home. We haven't had this many women as a share of the population in the labor force. It's down a little bit, but yes. And we can only continue to have this kind of economy if we have a care economy, indeed a strong care infrastructure upon which the rest of the economy sits. And yet we all know, and as so many people I know have talked about on the earlier panel, that while the care economy supports the overall economy, the quality of those experiences matters for children. That is our future human supply chain. High quality care experiences in the earliest years of a child life are so important. And there is, I'm actually very proud of my profession on this. There are now so many economics papers that show us, that demonstrate with a lot of math, just how important those early years are and the quality of care that kids get for future economic outcomes. If you don't care about the human outcomes and you just care about the economic ones, we've got a lot of evidence for you on that, let alone the fact that we think it's good for kids. But of course, we know for too long it's been out of reach. And I think about the high costs, all the costs facing the care providers who want to provide high quality care, from the buildings that they're in, to the quality of the food they're providing, to the quality of the jobs that they're creating. And then I think about all the constraints on families and just what a large share of family income childcare can eat up. And yet this is so socially necessary, and it's been so exciting to see Secretary Yellen and the Treasury Department take a leadership role on this fundamentally important economic issue. We also know, and that's why I was so excited to be able to be with you all today, we know that the provider landscape is made up mostly of small firms, many of them sole proprietorships. That's like one person without other employees. And they face high startup costs, thin profit margins, and are particularly vulnerable to economic headwinds and to economic shocks. And we know that the owners of these businesses are disproportionately women, they're disproportionately women of color, and they may face more pronounced barriers as they are trying to access capital. So it was so exciting to come in and hear this panel talking about how we're gonna make sure that they have access to that capital. And I want to note Sonia's point, which I thought was just so important. You talked about the stacking, that we need to stack these. We need to make sure that access to capital is stacked, that we need a wraparound approach, and that CDFIs are uniquely positioned to play that role in the market for care, providing support to communities that have historically been underserved by traditional financial institutions. So thank you for your work that you do and for the time and the time that you took today to be here to talk about it. So we are looking to you as leaders in this space because we know that providing high quality care, it takes a village. And we're excited about the work and so proud, honestly, of the work that we have been doing in this administration to advance a vision of care that works for all families, and excited to partner and work with you in the days and weeks and months to come. So with that, I think I get to free you to go out into a gorgeous spring afternoon, but thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.